The world has still gone nutty, buddy, even downright cruddy, buddy. We shall miss the past, buddy, but there's still Buddycast. No, don't be nutty, go meet a buddy here on Buddycast.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and host of Buddycast, Nick Sorensen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of everybody's favorite show, Buddycast. I'm your host, Nick Sorensen. Man, I love that theme song. I love that intro, and I love this show. It's been a while. I know. It's been a while. Don't get mad at me. Life's been busy. But we have a special buddy on the show today. We have my buddy, Eugene Cross. For those who don't know Eugene and I went to the same high school. Eugene's from my hometown, and now he is big. He is living the Hollywood dream. If you've seen TV shows like The Santa Clauses, if you've seen just basically almost anything, he's probably behind it. Eugene, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm enjoying it. I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
You and me both. I've missed the show, and I'm glad we finally solidified a date to say, hey, let's do this, you know?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, Eugene, you're a creative writer. Take me down your creative writing path. Take me down the journey of how this all began.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always loved writing, wrote some really bad poetry as a kid, and then, kind of was adrift in college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh after graduating from Cathedral Prep, our alma mater, and was just no idea what I wanted to do. And as a sophomore, as sometimes happens, I took an elective, an intro to creative writing class, and I just was knocked on, back on my chair or onto the floor, wherever I was knocked down. That's where I sort of got my inspiration. I just loved it. And suddenly school went from being a burden and something that was sort of, you had to do. All of a sudden I was signing up for classes, taking every lit and writing class I could, visiting authors when they would come to Pitt to read. And I fell in love with literary fiction, really. I mean, that was sort of where I began. Poetry or short stories, novels. And that's what I wanted to do, and so I spent 10 years as a college professor. I taught for 5 years at Penn State Barron in Erie, and then 3 years in Chicago, Northwestern University of Chicago, a couple other places, 2 years in New York, published a book of short stories. But I had always had a love of comedy and a love of TV and movies. I spent a lot of time as a teacher talking to my students about movies that I loved. And so when I was, maybe my early 30s, I decided to give it a shot. And I wrote some spec scripts, which are sort of scripts of an existing show, your own ideas for an episode. And through that and through some really great programs out here in LA, I was able to get a manager and get staffed on a TV show and sort of have been trying to ride that wave ever since, with some long periods of unemployment in between. So doing the best we can.
When you were in LA, did you take like any classes or anything? Did you take like any seminars to help you build to where you are?
Totally. So, I mean, definitely read a lot. What I did was I started reading scripts, right? So it's like when I wanted to be a short story writer, I had all my short stories that I loved, my Hemingway, my Tobias Wolff, my, Louise Erdrich, so many different writers I admired. And so I did the same thing when I got to LA. I realized that I was 10 years behind. I mean, a lot of people have been out here since their early 20s. And they were talking about showrunners and writers in the room and executive producers the way I had always spoken about authors. So I started reading pilots, which is the first episode of a television show. So, Frasier, Seinfeld, Friends, New Girl, One Day at a Time. I mean, it just didn't matter. Anything I could get my hands on, so that I was inundating myself with the craft and how it was done and how it looked on the page. Because as a TV fan, I knew what it looked like on screen. And I knew what those comedic actors could bring, but I wanted to see what it looked like after the writer's room before it went to the actors. And so a lot of reading the finished product. Then I was fortunate enough to take a couple classes with the National Hispanic Media Coalition. They have a TV writers program for Hispanic writers. And my mom's from Puerto Rico. And so I applied and got in. And then in 2018, I did a program at NBC called Writers on the Verge, where they also helped you really start to learn the craft and also how to, meet with showrunners and how to interview and how to put yourself out there to try and get hired in the first place. So it's been a long road, but I've had some great mentors along the way.
And speaking of mentors, you had a great mentor from Erie, Pennsylvania out there.
Yes, I got out here to LA and I thought I was just, anybody I could get my hands on that I knew or had some connection to. And when I was at NBC, somebody said, there's an executive out here from Erie, this guy, Mike Nunes. And we had a lot of friends in common. And he was assigned to me as my mentor and has been so encouraging, so supportive, and also just a wealth of wisdom because he's been through it. I mean, he's been through the entire process and understands it in ways that I still don't. And so I'm very, very grateful to him. And it doesn't hurt that we have a shared love of good wings and Yingling and all things Western Pennsylvania.
And you mentioned reading scripts for like some of your favorite comedies, some of your favorite. What are some of your favorite movies? What are some of your favorite comedies, favorite shows?
It's a great question. And I used to talk to my students about it. I used to say, it's not a comedy, but my favorite movie, and I don't know, it always kind of changes, but Cool Hand Luke with Paul Newman is up there for me. In terms of shows, I mean, I grew up on Cheers. I grew up on it. I remember the final episode. It was a huge event. I love those characters. I love the stories. I watch it to this day. I watch it almost every night just to unwind. And it does not matter what season it is, what episode it is. It just is funny and it's poignant and it's great. I love it. And so Cheers is definitely in my top 3. I love Frasier, but of course, without Cheers, there's no Frasier. Love Seinfeld. I was raised on Seinfeld, Thursday night TV, NBC, Seinfeld and Friends. And so many others. I mean, cartoons and Saturday Night Live, David Letterman, Late Night. I mean, just Conan O'Brien. I mean, all those shows were amazing and just continue to inspire me. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. My holy grail, it's tough. My holy trinity. I would definitely put Seinfeld up there and Cheers, and then I don't know, maybe a dozen more.
Awesome. Have you gotten the chance, since you're out in that, since you're out in LA, since you're out in the Hollywood area, have you gotten a chance to meet anyone from those shows? Have you gotten to meet any of like your heroes growing up?
No, you know what is fun? I mean, some of them for sure. I not the actors so much as the writers, because I'm behind the scenes more, which is where I love to be. I'm working on a pilot now with ABC, and we brought on Chris Lloyd as a consulting producer. And Chris is, I mean, his dad was a writer for the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Chris, him and his former partner, Steve Levitan, they created Modern Family. Chris was a showrunner on Frasier. He has 12 Emmys. I mean, he's a legend. And the fact that he's helping us out is just like, I pinch myself every day. Literally, he just has these small notes and small things that he mentions. And immediately you're like, that's the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. And thinking about shows in a way that I've never thought about them, which is longevity. Like, how do you have, we call them story engines, right? Like, things that are going to continue to push the story forward. So if you think of Friends, Ross and Rachel, the will they, won't they, that relationship back and forth, like it was entertaining and it had ups and downs. And so you wanted to tune in and see where it went. That's a story engine. It's creating story. So definitely have had the opportunity to meet some of my heroes behind the scenes. Actors, for sure. I mean, that too, I was fortunate enough to work with. I was a huge fan of a show called Wings, which took place at a little airport in Nantucket. And one of the brothers in the show was this guy, Steven Weber. I was fortunate enough to work with him. Fran Drescher from The Nanny, I worked with her. And then very, very briefly, I worked with on season 2 of The Santa Clauses. We cast Tracy Morgan as the Easter Bunny.
Ooh.
Oh, he was incredible. I mean, he is the guy you see on TV. So getting to work with him was an incredible moment.
I'm going to ask you about the Santa Clauses in a moment, but you brought up another important point. You're working on a pilot right now. Tell us about that pilot.
Definitely. I appreciate you asking. It's my first pilot, really. I'm very scared, terrified. I have a million questions. I am in awe of people that just are inundated with meetings and emails because I've never had that before. And suddenly it's happening. We have to hire department heads. So, casting directors, wardrobe design, makeup artists, the line producer, all these things that, transportation people. And so it's been a lot, and I felt a little overwhelmed, but I've got great people around me. So I created the show, but the top dog of any show is the showrunner. And so I chose a woman that I had worked with before, Robin Shore, who's incredible. She was the showrunner of a Disney Plus series called Diary of a Future President, but she has been in the business for a long time. Yeah, she worked on the Carmichael Show. She worked on The Middle. We worked together on the reboot of Punky Brewster. And she just knows the business. And so she's the showrunner and handles a lot of the big decisions. And then I'm the creator. So I get to have the fun part, which is the writing and the punching up of the script and trying to make it funnier and trying to make it more poignant. But we just began casting this week, and we are supposed to shoot the pilot. It's a multicam. So we'll shoot in front of a live studio audience, and we're going to do that on June 12th.
Hey, if you have any if you have any hybrid or anything like that roles, hey, and you need someone, you need
Absolutely.
an extra.
Listen, Nick, you would crush it. I have no doubt. I would love to. I would be honored to write jokes for you.
That would be awesome if you ever have any digital role or something, like the distant cousin or something. That
Definitely. Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm. So when you're in the room and you're writing the script, what's going through your head? Take us through your thinking process of how you create a script.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's a lot different if you're doing it alone versus doing it on a show. I could talk about the latter because I think that's the more fun process. Doing it alone is kind of hard because you're sort of in a room, coming up with characters, thinking of an idea, arguing with yourself, going back and forth. Any writer knows from writing, it's hard to be alone and do that process. Which is part of what drew me to TV is it's very communal. When you're in a writer's room, you spend a lot of time. I don't know what I'll say the PG version, which is BSing, right? I want to keep it for all ages, but
the buddy-like version, we call it.
The buddy, yeah, I love it. The buddy-like version. We BS a lot. We tell a lot of stories. We make each other laugh, and there are times when I pinch myself because it's like you are in a room with some of the funniest people you will ever meet. And since I've been in LA, it's only been 8 years, but since I've been in LA, I've been in writers' rooms with writers who graduated from Harvard and worked on the Harvard Lampoon. And I've been in writers' rooms with guys who haven't gone to college. It does not matter because there is no degree for being funny. There's no degree for knowing story. People from all backgrounds, from every part of the world. And to me, that's the pleasure of it. It's just that it doesn't matter how smart you are. Or it doesn't matter what your pedigree is. If you understand humor and story, and you're fun to be in a writer's room with for 12 hours a day, you've got a shot at that job. And so we spend a lot of time getting to know each other, and we spend a lot of time talking about the show and talking about the tone and what we want to accomplish. And then we start to pitch ideas, and those are, we call it blue sky. What's your blue sky? Well, I have an idea for an episode of Cheers where Sam gets, locked in the closet or whatever it might be. And then people pitch in and they have ideas and they pitch on your pitch. And it's one of the reasons why we said, hopefully, and I believe this to my core, is that AI can't do this job because you need multiple people that you're throwing out an idea. Nick, that's a great idea. What if this happened? And then somebody else, oh, I like what you said about Nick's idea. What if this happened? And it's so, just a concerted effort of people working together. And then you get that episode idea up and you sort of put it on the board in a 3-act structure. What are the beats? What are the things that have to happen? We call those the beats. Those are the things that must happen in the episode. That's the story. And then you take whatever writer is working on that episode and you send them off for a week out of the room so that they can write it. And then they bring it back. And as a room, you go through it together. It's kind of stressful because you're nervous. You want everybody to like it, but everybody has ideas or they have jokes they want to pitch. And then, of course, there's notes from the studio, notes from the network, notes from the actors. And it's just a very fun process. It can be a little bit stressful, but it's also, it's really a group effort.
Mm-hmm. And tell us more about your pilot. What's the name of it? What's the basis of it?
Yeah, definitely. So it's based, it came from something that happened in my real life, which is I had great parents. I lost my dad back in 2005. Miss him every day, think about him every day. My mom was in Erie, and back in 2018, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so we moved her out to LA, and she's doing really well. But it was scary, it was scary. I was living in Los Angeles, and I got a call from my mom, in the middle of the night on Halloween of 2016. And she was, or actually 2018, pardon me. And she was in Puerto Rico visiting my uncle. And she just said, she goes, I don't know where I am, and I was on a flight to Puerto Rico that day, and picked her up and brought her back to Erie. And she was at UPMC for a bit, and then brought her out to LA. And now she's followed at UCLA. But what I realized that I hadn't before is that 55 million Americans are dealing with memory loss, right? And the only times you see it on screen, it's drama, the father.
Like This Is Us.
This Is Us, exactly. And I, understandably, right? Because I understand that it's a serious issue. But I also think that comedy helps people get through the toughest things, right? And I've seen everything else dealt with in comedy. I always tell people that the first alcoholic I ever knew was Sam Malone from watching Cheers. So that's a guy who owns a bar, and that show goes for 11 seasons. And he's an alcoholic, and it deals with it, and I've seen every other sort of really serious topic dealt with through comedy, except for this. And so we took out the idea. It's about a father and a son. And so it came from this idea of caring for my mom, but we created these two characters. There's Hank Flemings. He's the sort of life of a party that never ends, the irresponsible dad, the dad who always wanted to be the son's friend more than he wanted to be a father. And we all know those types. And he's diagnosed with Alzheimer's, very early stage. And his son, Ben, is the polar opposite. He's worked his whole life not to become his irresponsible father. So he's very buttoned up, very put together, and is successful. And him and his father are somewhat estranged. And then when this diagnosis comes through, they rekindle their relationship, and it becomes a story about the two of them making up for lost time and building new memories together before the father maybe forgets some of the older ones. And it's called Forgive and Forget. So we're shooting the pilot for ABC, and it's exciting. It's also nerve-wracking because a pilot does not necessarily mean that you're going to go to series. They'll take 2 weeks to evaluate it, and we'll be saying a lot of prayers and crossing a lot of our fingers and toes and lighting some candles and yes, crossing ourselves. But it's still a long uphill battle, and we understand that the odds are stacked against us. But it's been, we're blessed to be at this point.
Hey, as one of my favorite fictional fighters says, every champion was once a contender who refused to give up.
Exactly. I love it. Everybody's an underdog until you throw your chips in the ring.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So in this process, like with writing a new, TV show, like what's really been like your favorite part of it all?
Oh, wow. Well, we're very fortunate in that, and I'm completely honest with everything about this, which is that to this day, Hollywood is built around the stars. The stars move the needle. And that's the star directors and the stars who star in the things that we like. And sorry for saying stars 57 times. But, yeah. So I was fortunate enough to get linked up with Ty Burrell, who was, he's best known for playing Phil Dunphy in Modern Family. And that show ended a few years ago, and he's living in Utah, and he has a family, and he's kind of, removed himself from the limelight, and is been very successful. Long story short, we had a meeting, and he liked the idea for the script, and he liked a very early version of the script. And somewhere along the way, he said, you know what? I think that I could play this guy. I could play this role. So he's just been an absolute delight. And I've worked with some actors who aren't. He is universally loved. I've not met anybody out here who is not like Ty Burrell is one of the nicest guys. So working with him has been one of the highlights of this, because not only is he completely generous and kind with both his time and his insights, but he also has a lot of great ideas for the show. And so working with him has just been, I know it's not always going to be like this, because you don't always get paired up with people who are that, sort of genuine, and especially people have enjoyed that level of success. Sometimes you lose perspective, and I never feel that with him. I always just feel like he's so genuine, so funny. And that's really gratifying to put words on a page. I'm not a naturally funny person. Like we have those friends, right, from high school that you're like, oh my God, that person could say anything and I would laugh. Right.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like, it was always like, I wanted to write for somebody like that. And that's how it feels, is I've gotten that opportunity,
Awesome. Now you got to give me your God's honest reaction. What was it like when Ty Burrell agreed to do this pilot, to be this character for you? Like, what was going through your head?
It was terrifying because he had come on board. So most actors have their own production company, or they call them pods or whatever they are. So he had come on board as an executive producer, and we're like, that's exciting because he's attached to the project, and his name alone is going to get us some meetings that we wouldn't otherwise have gotten. Plus, he's just a pleasure to work with. But he had not committed to playing the father. And so there was a moment where we were going to take the story out and pitch it. And we pitched it to 6 or 7 places, and 6 of the 7 turned us down. ABC was the only one who bought it. And Ty, after the process, said, I'm considering attaching to Star, but I have to talk to, he phrased it in a very kind way. He goes, somebody much smarter than myself, my wife, which I think is something most of us can agree on, right? We go to our wives.
That's what I say all the time. Let me ask the missus first, then I'll get back to you.
Nick, you were a smart man, because I'm trying to do that same thing, right? And
that's
so
how Buddycast got started.
Is
Let me
it
ask the
really?
missus yeah, because I actually it started back when we were dating. Yeah. I asked her, I'm like, hey, I have this idea, but I don't want it to come between us. I don't want it, to be. I don't want you to ever feel like, hey, it's Buddycast over you, or like it's always gonna be like. Yeah, I never want to go through that dilemma. I never want to go through the ultimatum of it's the show or me, because my answer immediately. This. Well, buddies, this has been fun. Thanks for joining us. Have a nice life.
Yes,
something like that. But yeah. And she looked back at me and said, "Not only do I love this idea, but can I be your first guest?"
Oh, I love that. That's incredible. And what's better than that is like your partner being supportive and wanting to be part of something that you're intrigued by and that interests you. And I love that. That's yeah.
So he asked his wife, and
so he asked his wife, and it's a big sacrifice because they live in Utah. So he would have to come back to LA to shoot, and it'd be, time away from family and time away from, his home and the different ventures he's in Utah. So she very kindly and generously shared him with us, and he decided to attach. And then we just, you're over the moon because he has an MFA in theater from Penn State University, which is something that we bonded over. Yeah. And one of the things that we've said is that it's for a multicam, like a Cheers or a Friends, it's such a physical form of comedy that it helps to have theatrical experience and background, because it's, on a movie set, you might get 15, 20 takes, and it might be, this scene. On a multicam, you have a full audience. It's very much like a play. I mean, there's a lot of similarities to like putting on a play, so it's been fun.
Awesome. So not only are you writing your own TV show, you've also written 4 TV shows that have been established, like the Santa Clauses. Tell us about your episode with the Santa Clauses.
Yeah, the Santa Clauses was great. I was such a fan of the movie as a kid. Oh, thank you. Oh my God, that's so sweet. Somebody said they were a fan of watching the Santa Clauses.
Absolutely. Just a quick note before we can remind our buddies that something that we've learned here, we have 2 groups here. We have the Buddycast Facebook page, and then we have Buddycast Buddies, which I'll send you an invite to in a bit here. But if you comment on Buddycast Buddies, make sure you comment your name so that way we can see it, because otherwise it turns out like this. I know this is my buddy Tracy. I was looking this up earlier, so hi Tracy. But just a reminder, buddies, if you go on Buddycast Buddies and use your name, just type in like a little dash and then say like Joe Smith or something, you know what I mean? So Santa Clauses, go ahead.
Santa Clauses, and thank you to Tracy for mentioning that. No, it was a blast to work on because I was a fan of the and I had been out of work for a while. It's a very fickle industry, and you can be working for years at a time on a show that's going years at a time, or you can be out of work. And I had been out of work for a little bit, and was just really trying hard to get staffed on anything. And I had no idea they were going to do a TV show about the Santa Clauses. And then my representatives reached out and they said, we submitted you for this and we got you an interview. And I met with the showrunner, Jack Burdett, who's another hero of mine. He created Last Man Standing with Tim Allen. He wrote on Frasier. His father used to write for Three's Company, and he is just the sweetest guy. And, they brought me on board, and it was a dream because, first of all, talking about Christmas, it was during the pandemic. Everybody was scared, and you got to talk about Christmas all day long. I mean, I'm like, this is a dream, talking about jokes that we could give the elves and, different ideas for story. And then the other advantage of it for me is that I'm the father of 3 very young kids. I have a 6-year-old Beckett, a 4-year-old Reese, and a baby Clementine. I say baby, she's 20 months. But on days when we weren't shooting, I got to bring them to set, and it's the North Pole. I mean, we were over here at the Fox lot on the west side of LA, and they would come to the set, and we were in the reindeer stables, and there was Santa's sleigh, and this is Santa's living quarters, and every different table, there's a bowl of candy, and they were just blown away. So it was a lot of fun and a lot of great people.
Awesome. Tell us about the episode you wrote.
Yeah, so I wrote, I co-wrote an episode in season 1 and season 2. That one I wrote for season 2, I believe, is episode 3. And it's about Santa trying to teach his son how to drive the sleigh. He very much wants his son to be his successor when he retires from the post. And the one thing his son can't get a hold on is his fear of heights. And so my sort of half of the episode that I focused on was really, funny ways to show him, pushing his son, and then ultimately a resolution to that conflict, right? So the conflict throughout the episode there is like, he's pushing his son really hard. And that's something any of us can sort of, I think, tap into as a parent or as a child, right? Whether it's a coach or a teacher or a parent pushing us, but also reminding his son that he's proud of him. And that was sort of the sweet resolution to the episode. And like I said earlier, it was a blast because Tracy Morgan was in the episode, and he's just a comedic force and another guy that just, he could read the phone book and you would be laughing out of your chair because his cadence, his inflection. And he came in full makeup, and we had like 15 or 20 minutes to kill before he had to go start shooting. And he just sat down, and it was like being at one of his stand-up shows. He just launches in, and you're like, this is who he is, So it was just a pleasure from start to finish. And then we wrapped really early in 2023, the writer's room and shooting it. And then right after that was the writer's strike. So it was sort of perfect timing. Yeah, really, really kind of, yeah.
That's another question I have for you is talk about the writer's strike, like your personal experience with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I was newer to the industry than a lot of people out on the picket line, but I realized what they were talking about, which was that writers do a lot of work and you end up doing a lot of free work. So one of the things that we were fighting for is that the average day on set is about 12 hours. And you always need writers on set because stuff's getting rewritten to the last moment. I mean, for any number of reasons. An actor doesn't like a joke. An actor has trouble saying a certain word. An actor doesn't like a story point. Worked with Tim Allen and he was fun, but like sometimes he would just question. He has a very specific idea of the mythology of the North Pole, the mythology of Santa Claus. And I mean, it's his franchise. He's been doing it for many years. And so we wanted to be respectful of that. But sometimes we'd be on set and he would want to change something, and changing one thing changes a lot of things, right?
Yep.
But yeah, one of the things that we were on strike for is that writers, by and large, are not paid to be on set. So you're there for 12 hours and you get your free lunch and you're doing a lot of work. But we were fighting for at least day rates and things like that. We were fighting for protection against AI. We were fighting for more rooms, bigger rooms, more writers in the room because it's necessary, because it makes for better TV. It's not, we want jobs. I mean, like most people, right? Like everybody wants to work, but we want also to put out a product that we're proud of. And we know what that takes. And it's not 4 people sitting in a room, trying to come up with a story. It's more than that.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad you guys came out of it strong, and I'm glad you guys came out of it with the outcome that you deserve, the outcome that you wanted, rather than just settling and just being like, we're just tired of not having work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you guys really stood your ground and really
totally
said, like, this is what we want. We're not going to, kind of like the song says, we're not going to take it.
Yeah,
know?
there's a lot of that on the line, and a lot of people coming out and being, Imagine Dragons came out and played a set on the picket line at Netflix one day. Weezer came out and played a set on the picket line at Paramount one day. Drew Carey, who's from our neck of the woods, right? A Cleveland guy. This is a guy who, God bless this guy, for the entirety of the strike, if you were a member of the Writers Guild and went to Bob's Big Boy or Swingers Diner, 2 restaurants, and showed your union card, you ate for free. He picked up the check. And I'm talking
Wow.
tens of thousands of dollars every week. And people needed it, and he did it. And no, Nick, he didn't want any press. I mean, it's like, do unto others. Let your left hand not know what your right hand giveth. I butchered that, I'm sure. But people were coming out of the woodwork. Jay Leno would come down to the picket line with dozens of donuts, people contributing everything. I mean, food, music, support. It really showed a lot of humanity. And when your spirits were down, you were reminded by the goodness, the innate goodness of people and their willingness to help. And I love that.
So it really kept you in the spirit. It really kept you in the, like, this is why I do what I do, even when you came back afterwards,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because those were, it gets hot out here, and you're supposed to be on the picket line 3 or 4 days a week, and sometimes for 3 hours at a pop. And, I'd take my kids, not for 3 hours at a pop, but just for, a little bit. Cause like just seeing them, I think, cheered other people up. And I have pictures of my kids where I'm in my, Writers Guild of America West shirt, and they have their shirts, and we're holding our picket signs. And I was so proud, because it's like, it's not all about the bottom line, right? It's about treating people right, treating people with respect, and paying people what they're worth. And
not being replaced by a machine.
Yeah, not being replaced by a machine. And exactly. And just, I was lucky enough on the Santa Claus season 2 to work with a comic, a Latino comic, Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias. He goes by Fluffy, and he's incredible. Yep. Yeah, he's so funny. This is a guy who sells out Dodger Stadium. I mean, he is amazing. And we met on set, and we were talking with another producer, and Gabe goes, my 2 rules: work hard, be nice. Work hard, be nice, right? And that's not tough. That's not tough. That's important.
Mm-hmm. Hey, as Mr. Rogers said, the ultimate way to success: be kind.
Be kind, right? I love that. It's like, I talk to my kids about it all the time, and like, we'll finish a sporting event, or and they'll be like, are you proud of me? I scored a goal. And I'm like, I am, but I'm more proud of, the way you congratulated the other team afterwards, the way you stuck up for your brother when something happened, the way you helped that teammate up who fell down. Like, I'll say it to them. I'm like, what's the most important thing? And that's it. I mean, be kind, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Kindness gets you everywhere, and I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
Absolutely. Just like we say on Buddycast, our motto here is go be someone's buddy, because you never know what somebody's going through. And it's always amazing hearing stories like yours, hearing just anyone's. I've interviewed, you've seen my resume. That's how you found me. That's how you found me.
Yeah.
You've seen my resume on the show. I told Sinbad to his face, God bless him. He's doing well right now. I'm thankful about that. But I told him to his face, just as much as I'm honored to be speaking to you right now, I'm just as honored to be speaking to the piano teacher I grew up next door to, who's doing musical therapy right now.
Yeah.
I'm just as honored meeting talking to the hot dog vendor that everyone in Erie loves, because Erie.
Yes.
We don't just have that restaurant like that, New York lunch or something. Yeah, it's New York lunch. It's fine. It's an Erie staple.
Yes. I agree. No, and I mean, you're such a good example of that, because it's true. It's like, you can have a Sinbad on, and I was a massive fan of Sinbad when I was growing up. His movies were amazing, cracked me up. And then, like the guy working next door, and my dad was very much like, he would always say that. He's like, talk to everyone, because everyone has something to teach you. You can learn something from everybody. And you're
exactly
right. Yeah, the Buddycast is the epitome of that, because it's like you have people from all walks of life, all professions. I was going through it. I'm amazed. Doctors, poets, comedians, writers, therapists. It's incredible. That's the shared humanity of it is fantastic. So,
now we have an Erieite who's in Hollywood writing for TV.
That's right. And I mean, I'll take the luster right off of it. I started as a writer's PA. I got lunch, coffee, dinner, snacks. I remember a writer one time, an executive producer said, "Can you get us donuts?" I said, "Of course." He goes, "And also coffee." I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "They're different places." He goes, "It's so good if they would arrive at the exact same time, so that the coffee is hot with the donuts that are fresh." And I'm like, I will make it happen, because there's honor in work. And I don't care if you're, the head of the studio or sweeping the street. Everybody is there and has their thing that they're doing. But yeah, no, I'm changing, I'm still changing a lot of diapers. I'm still taking out a lot of trash, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Exactly. One of my favorite sayings in life is I treat the janitor the same way I treat the CEO.
Yeah, I
You
love
know,
that.
the
Yeah,
same amount of respect, the same amount of because you never know. You never
you
know
never
when that
know.
janitor is going to rise and be the
Yeah,
CEO one day.
exactly. You're right. You're right. It's true. It's true. And those people everybody works just super hard. I mean, that's being out here, you see just how hard people work, and how, everybody's just striving for like a good life for their kids and for themselves. And you're like, you just want to honor that, and you honor it by being a buddy. So I love it. I love the
Mhm.
mission of this.
And is that what you learned as a glorified writer? Just that, or as that runner, just being that position. Like one day I want to be like them, and this is the way to do it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think for me, like, the advantage was, like, I was, like, right outside the writer's room, and I could hear them talking, and, like, I'd get a peek at the writer's room when I would bring in lunch, and I would look at the dry erase board, and they had the 3-act structure up, and then I met mentors. I met people that I stayed connected to, and that meant a lot to me, and they became teachers to me, and these were people who took time out of their busy schedules. I would say, exactly like, with the Buddycast, I just meet me for a cup of coffee if you have any time. And if you don't, how about a phone call? And if you don't have time for that, can I send you an email with 4 questions? And 99% of the people were always willing to do it. And to this day, if I see a show that goes and I don't know anybody on staff, I'll reach out to these mentors of mine, and they put in a good word, and they fight for, it's meant the world. And yeah, no, I remember, and I always tell people, I'm like, because you think of LA and Hollywood, and you think like, oh, the glitz and glamour. And I'm like, for me, at least, it's been anything but. Like, I think in 8 years, maybe I'm just a bad hang, but I think in 8 years, I've been invited to like one party associated with the industry. It's very much still like sitting in a room and working. And so like that, the mystique of that, I think, is a lot of just what sometimes you imagine it's like. But I will say that my first job, I got out here, I drove from Erie. I was visiting my mom. I had to be in LA on a Monday. I left LA on a Friday. This is back in the summer of 2016. I got to LA, and, I realized I'm the coffee guy, I'm the lunch guy, I'm the dinner guy. I was like, okay, put your all into it, get everything here on time, don't mess up any orders. And it was a show for ABC called Downward Dog. It was set in Pittsburgh. And I was the writer's PA, and we were at a little studio called Sunset Gower Studios. And it was like a Wednesday, and the showrunners were like, hey, can you go get us our coffee? I'm like, of course. So I went out, and coming back with a coffee for all the writers, carrying my trays, whatever. And I look over, and I'm like, that's Angelina Jolie. And I remember going up to the office, and I was so intimidated by the writers, because they were doing what I wanted to do. And I was so intimidated that I wouldn't really like talk to them, or I would talk to them, but I tried to be very careful. I didn't want to like take their time or bother them or mess up, if they were onto a story. I didn't want to get in the way. But I remember I was like, everybody's going to be impressed by Angelina Jolie. So I brought the coffee, and I said, guys, Angelina Jolie's walking outside. And they jumped up and rushed to that window to stare. And I was like, yeah, everybody is still in awe of somebody else, right? And that it was a great reminder.
Everyone's probably thinking, how can we write her into the script? How can we get her to agree to this?
Exactly. I mean, she was, you see a movie star, and sometimes you're like, oh yeah, that person was meant to be a movie star. And that was one of those times.
Absolutely. So on top of a TV writer, you are also an author. You are also a book writer. I've got 2 of your books right next to me. The first one we're going to talk about is Miss Me Forever. Can you tell us about this book?
Absolutely. So back in, maybe 2011, 2010, 2011, I had the very great good fortune of, my mom was at First Alliance Church, and I would go with her, and they were running ESL classes for the refugee population in Erie. And so I began to volunteer with that. And then I did some creative writing workshops with them. And they were a group that's known as the La Chompsas, which are, and I'm probably mispronouncing things because I'm not the most well-spoken guy, but they were essentially, they're Nepalese refugees who were living in Nepal, ethnically Nepalese, but from Bhutan. And the US took quite a few of them, and there's a huge population of them living in Erie. And I was very fortunate enough to meet them, and they are the most positive, joyful, hardworking, sweet, encouraging, inspiring people I think I've ever been around. And a lot of them have been separated from friends, from family. And so I sort of got the idea of a character, Tulsi, who separated from a sister character and who spends time searching for her because he can't quite let that go. And that became it started as a short story, and it eventually became the novel. It took me quite a bit of time to write. And then I was kind of transitioning into TV at the time. So took me a while to find a publisher, and then things just kind of worked out together. And the book came out last November, and I'll be back in April to do a reading at Penn State Barron, April 18th. Ooh. Yeah, which I'm looking forward to. And then a book, I believe like a book signing at Warner Books at the Liberty Plaza, April 18th in the afternoon. So everybody's been, that store, those owners are amazing. Everybody at Barron,
they are.
No, they're the best. They're the best. I mean, they've been so encouraging and so welcoming. And everybody go out and buy a book at Warner's today. And any book, doesn't have to be mine. Buy any book at all. And then Penn State, I mean, that was my first real job after getting out of school. And I taught there from 2006 to 2011. And those people are I mean, family to me. Tom Noyes, who runs the creative writing program, George Looney, a lot of people who were there and aren't there, but just amazing faculty, amazing students. And I learned how to teach there. And I was bad at first. And maybe I was bad when I left, but they sure helped me. They sure helped me learn that craft.
Hey, every professional started somewhere, you know?
Exactly. You know, you're studying writing, you're studying literature, you're not really studying how to be a teacher. And so I credit my students, and I credit my fellow faculty who were also generous with their time and advice, and really took a shot on me. And I'll be forever grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. What's one of the biggest lessons you learned from your students?
Wow. I mean, there's a lot, but I would say one thing I would say is like how quickly time moves, because my students, I remember referencing shows and actors and movies and authors and even world events, and them not being as familiar with those, and me thinking, oh, how could they not know about that, actor or character? But then them talking about things that I have totally no idea about, and me being like, yeah, that's life. That's just how the culture evolves. That's how the zeitgeist moves on. So the willingness to be more earnest and more to search out those things and try and educate myself about them. Like I learned that from them. And then just like the unbridled joy of a student, like getting something and really being passionate about what they're learning. Like that does more, I think, for the teacher than it does for the student, because it just reminds you of like the justness and the nobility of that profession and the nobility of trying to educate somebody. And that to me was just so rewarding and so gratifying. So like, that's a gift. I mean, I guess it's less a lesson and more a gift, but that's directly from students. I love that.
Wonderful. Another book that I have right beside me is The Fires of Our Choosing. Tell us about this book.
Yeah. So that was it started as my manuscript when I was in graduate school. It was about 12 stories. And then over the years, those stories sort of carouseled in and out, were rewritten, were rejected, were published in different journals. And then I think from the time I wrote the first story to the time it got published, it was maybe 7 years of work. And it changed. I mean, to me, it was the idea of publishing a book was a dream. And so I loved short story collections, and I'm so proud that that's my first book. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, maybe they don't all hold up as well as I wish they would. But I think that's any writer, any artist looks back and sort of, time gives you perspective, and maybe you do things differently. But I was so proud and grateful to the publisher for accepting that book. And it was just, it's something, it still makes me very happy.
Wonderful, wonderful. You've taken me through the TV writing process. Take me through the book writing process. What's like if you were to sit down today and start writing a new book, what's it like?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. It's very solitary in comparison, and that's just because you're doing it on your own. But I think the nice part is when you get readers and those people that you trust to give you feedback, that always means a lot. So, I mean, I would sit down, and for me, it was an idea. It was something I could not shake. So sometimes it was a character, sometimes it was a shred of dialogue or even a description, but it was just something I could not get rid of, right? And I would sit down with that and start to write. And the hope was that after a while, your subconscious starts to kick in so that you're being surprised. You're not plotting everything out. You're sort of being surprised by what those characters are doing or saying or how they're treating each other. Robert Frost has a famous poem where he says, you know, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. So you want to be surprised by your characters and you want to be moved by them. And then it's just, I mean, it's not like this for everybody. It's not like this for Stephen King. It's not like this for a lot of writers who are far better and far quicker than I am. But for me, it's years because you're writing the first draft and you're realizing, you know, it's not what you want it to be. So you're revising, you're cutting, you're going in different directions. And that continues for a long time until you feel like it's worthy to send out to your friends. And then you send it out to your friends. And because they're not as close to it as you are, they can see the mistakes that you're blind to, right? Because they can see those decisions which you haven't edited out that they know are mistakes. And so then you take their advice and you rewrite it. And that process continues. And then you finally get to a point where if you have an agent or a manager, you send the book to them. If not, you're sending it to competitions, you're getting feedback. And then eventually someday, hopefully you get that email that says, hey, you know, we like this and we want to publish it. We want to put this manuscript out as a book. So that means a lot.
The entire writing process, all I can think of is my buddy here, Snoopy, thinking like just the amount of like how many do you deal? How many have you had to deal with that where you've gotten that, you know, that dreaded letter, but then how glorious does it make it when you finally get the letter, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I was told you can't be a writer until you can wallpaper your bathroom in rejection letters. And I kept every rejection letter I ever had, and not out of spite, but out of that notion that you're a real writer when you have so many of these. You could wallpaper your house. And I might have enough at this point. And, you know, when I started out, you would submit stories to magazines or stories to journals. And with your submission, you would include a self-addressed stamped envelope. And that was so that if they rejected the story, they didn't have to spend money on postage. They already had the envelope. They would put your little rejection slip in there and send it back home to you. So I used to say a good day was when you came home and maybe had one of those. A bad day was when you came home and you looked in your mail and you saw your own address that you had written 3 or 4 times. And you said, these are all rejections. But it makes you stronger, right?
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. So, buddy, you mentioned it earlier, but just for the fans watching, you're coming back to Erie soon?
Yes, I'm very excited. I'm very grateful. Erie is my home. My wife's from there. I'm from there. I was born and raised in Erie. So I'm very grateful to be coming back Thursday, April 18th. I'll be at Penn State Barron at the Smith Chapel Reading Series. I believe it's 5 o'clock reception, 6 o'clock reading. Although check the website because I don't want to mess anybody up. And then in the afternoon, we haven't settled on an exact time, but Thursday, April 18th in the afternoon, I'll be doing a book signing at Warner Books in the Liberty Plaza with the amazing owners and staff over there.
Wonderful. Tell my buddy Kyle I said hi.
I will. He's the best. He's the best.
Absolutely. I got 2 more questions for you. One's going to be a 2-part question, but the first question is brought to us by my buddy Jonas Kane at #Positivity. He wants to know, in your own words, what does it mean to be someone's buddy?
It's a great question. It's a great question. I think to be somebody's buddy means 2 things. One is to be there in good and bad, right? Because it's easy to be there when the chips are on the table, but it's harder to be there when somebody's down and somebody needs a lending ear. Needs you to lend an ear rather. And then I think the other thing is just being willing to listen, right? I think even those people who are more quiet amongst us and more sort of reticent to share their troubles, it's exactly what you said earlier, man. You never know what anybody's going through. So always being able to listen and willing to listen. I think that's a true buddy is just lending an ear.
Wonderful. And you're absolutely right. It's just lending an ear. It's just taking that time to listen. That's what makes a buddy. That's what makes Buddycast, and that's what makes you a buddy on Buddycast. You're not a guest. You're a buddy.
Yay! I love it.
So, buddy, my final question to you is what we call the ultimate Buddycast question. It comes in two parts, and I'm going to give you part number one, which is, what is your advice to anyone who wants to be a screenwriter one day?
I love this question. I've gotten that before, different variations. I think my number one piece of advice, two pieces of advice: don't doubt yourself. Everybody out here is from somewhere else, right? Everybody out here. No, I very rarely do I meet a writer who's just born and bred in LA, and everybody comes, from other places. So never doubt yourself. Never think, oh, I can't do it. I don't know anybody who does it. Nobody does when they're starting out. The other thing is just to immerse yourself in what you love. If you love comedy, watch a lot of comedy, read a lot of comedy. If you love drama, read a lot of drama scripts. You can find them online for free. Do your due diligence, right? Immerse yourself in that world, because you're going to learn so much just through that. That's the self-educating part. That's the self-teaching, which is so important. And so, yeah, if you love Law and Order or CSI or any of those procedurals, watch a bunch of them. Find those scripts online. Read about how those actors got involved with those shows. It's when you find something you love, immersing yourself in it. I mean, how lucky are we that doing homework is watching TV, right? Or watching movies. That's the best homework there is.
I was about to say, I wouldn't argue with the teacher on that one.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I know you've done some stand-up, which is so incredible. And it's like, I'm sure like we talked about this. You've done stand-up. This is incredible. Your love of stand-up comes from going to a bunch of stand-up, meeting those comics, asking them questions, listening to their sets, watching them do it. And that's incredible, because it's like, there's nothing more sort of deflating than like meeting somebody who's like, I want to be an actor. I'm like, oh, really? Like, what are your favorite movies? I don't really watch movies. It's like, where does the love come from? Right. It's like, it's
like, I just want the fame and the fortune. I just want my name and lights. Well, when's the last time and like a lot of people I think don't realize too, like, you got to take those baby steps. You got to take those, like I was talking to an actor one time, and he started out local theater, built his way up, went to school, all that, and submitted his stuff. And that's how he got, he didn't just one day make a random film and go, hi, I'm Joe Smith.
Exactly.
And this is my act, because it would have sounded like that. It would have been like, hi, my name is Joe Smith. Totally. I am an actor,
Exactly. You have to pay your dues, and it's part of the process.
Exactly. And part two of my question is for anyone out there who wants to be an author. What is your advice to them?
Oh, wow. I would say, and this is something I have to remind myself of, that the blank page can be scary, right? Because it's so much easier, I think, sometimes to fix something that exists than to create something out of nothing. But just do it. I mean, just write, just jot things down. Sometimes when I'm stuck, I'll just write down what happened that day. I'll just keep a Microsoft Word document of like, what am I thinking? Just stick to it. Just write, because and this is advice that I was given that changed my outlook on things. There is no such thing as wasted writing. There is no such thing as wasted writing. Everything is helping you, even the stuff that you're going to throw away, even the stuff that you're going to look back on and cringe at, even that fourth grade diary where you're like, I can't believe I ever had a crush on Joey Zambuco or whatever it is. Everything is helping you get to the next level. Everything is teaching you the craft. You will never sit down and put pen to paper or start typing into a blank document and look back and think, I wasted that afternoon. No, you're doing something that is incredibly hard to do. It is incredibly hard to do. I fight myself every day about it, because I still have days where I'm like, I can't do it today. I can't do it, because it's one of the hardest things you will ever do. So you are winning by sitting down and writing a poem, sitting down and writing a story. Even if you look back at it and think you didn't waste your time. You did something noble and admirable, and you joined a lineage that goes back as far as you can imagine. So I love that.
And I lied. I have one more question for you that's just came to my mind. What do you do? What's your advice for writer's block?
I think stepping away from it, there is something to be said for going out and taking a walk, because I think that naturally, like when you step away from it, it's sort of you get a little bit of perspective, even not just, physically, figuratively as well. And so often I'll be stuck and I'll get up to go to the restroom, or I'll get up to walk around the block, and something will pop into my mind. And maybe it's not even what I was searching for, but it's helpful. So I think having a little bit of distance is good. That doesn't mean a weekend in Vegas. It means like a walk around the park. Yeah. Too much distance is bad too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eugene, thank you for being a buddy here on Buddycast. It was a pleasure. I'm glad we caught up again. Everyone, if you want to learn more about Eugene, please check out an Erie Times News article. I hear that writer was really good, but check out the Erie Times News article on him. Just reach out to him. He's a great guy. He's willing to chat with you if you have any questions or anything. Like if anybody that was watching here that wants to be in your shoes reached out to you, would they be able?
Absolutely. Anytime. You guys, please do. I mean, I'd love to hear from people, love talking to people. So this has been a pleasure.
It's been an honor. Stick around. We'll chat for a minute afterwards. But Eugene, before we close out today's show, I have one favor to ask you. I ask this to all my buddies that come on the show. Whatever you're going to do today, tomorrow, next week, next month, even next year, please promise me you're going to go out and you're going to go be someone's buddy.
I promise. 100%. 100%.
Wonderful. For all my buddies out there, this is my buddy, Eugene Cross. Please check out his work. Good luck with the pilot, buddy. I'm your host, Nick Sorensen. We'll catch you all next time here on everybody's favorite show.
Well, the days are going fast, buddy, we've got to make them last, buddy, before they've all gone past, buddy, tune in to Buddycast. But don't be none, it can make it, buddy, here on Buddycast.